just out walking just now and thinking about circumstances and how it's pretty much a beautiful day, and over the past week or two I've really been struggling to meditate and to come into my centre, and it's been quite a challenge, you know. Now, I've been doing it, I've been using the tree, and I've been using nature a lot to kind of help with the grounding. But something that came up for me today actually is related to influence, and it's related to what we can and cannot control. More often than not, living in a built up place, living in a city with loads of people, or being human, I guess, there's quite often things that are influencing our life that are out with our control. Sometimes it's the traffic or the weather, other people, our own physical body, whatever's going on in there, psychological processes. These are all kind of things that can get in the way of feeling how you want to feel, that blissful kind of whatever it is you want, happiness or... And it's making me realise and recognise that if there's something that we cannot control, that's affecting our internal state and our kind of emotional state, what can we do about that? How can we move past that or through that or manoeuvre that obstacle? For example, I'm in the park here right now, and there's a little bit of traffic coming from the main road that way. And it's easy to say, oh, you know, if that traffic wasn't there, this would be perfect right now. Or, you know, if the sun was just a little bit warmer today, it would just be amazing right now. And then when I start to dial into that kind of into that mindset, it's almost like how many things could I focus on as a cause of my discontentment? I could be like, oh my god, those fucking birds right now, I wish they would stop chirping, you know. The wind in the trees, if that would just go away, then I would be happy. And actually, everything's always there all the time. You know? It's almost like that, the metaphor of the detention, the clock in detention. I used to get detention quite a bit when I was at the Harris, and there's this big fucking clock on the wall, you know, and especially the one at the end of the day, when it was, you know, in this kind of warmer months, and the sun was coming through, and there's old classrooms, you know, dusty classrooms that had a particular smell about them, and I can just remember sitting there and the whole school evacuating, and then there's like the silence that falls over the school, and that fucking clock, and it was like it got louder and louder and slower with every click. When the reality is, I've been in that specific classroom for, I think it might have been French, once or twice. And throughout the whole lesson, I don't remember ever hearing that clock. But it was obviously there. And so, I guess it's like what you're focusing on, where your awareness is, determines I think it's something to do with your internal state, my internal state. So the same stimulus can evoke a positive feeling or a negative feeling, depending on how I perceive that kind of factor. But what I want to start to focus on, I'm thinking about, is letting go and saying that my internal state is not dependent on any external stimulus. So if I'm focusing on something externally to say that's the thing that's bothering me, then if that's removed, it's likely that thought process will just transfer like electricity onto the next thing, the next problem, the next, okay, no, that has to go. And it's likely that once you've deleted your whole reality and you're in a black box, in a black reality that's void of anything, that you're there and you're like, there's too much blackness here, it's too dark, you know? I think through the process of awareness meditation, we can learn to accept things the way they are. And by accepting things the way they are, we can begin to accept ourselves the way we are. And ultimately, that's where you're going to find contentment. There are things in life you can change, you know. There are definitely worth having motivating factors, and it's worth having goals and drives and desires, you know. You know, if you want to move location, or you want to work your way to build up to a new job, or improve your skill set, or whatever it is that you're into, that's awesome. But I think that's secondary to internal kind of peace. And actually, without that internal peace and balance and that harmony within yourself, you're never going to, no amount of achievements externally is going to bring you that. So this is something that we can control. Unlike the weather, or the nature, or the birds, or other people, these are things that we cannot control, but we can control our own internal state. And it's really actually quite simple. The very first part of the process is acceptance. Accepting yourself as you are. And even if there's things you want to change about yourself, that's totally cool too. But in the first instance, you have to accept where you are at. You have to accept yourself. And nobody chooses what they're going to look like, or who their parents are going to be, or the circumstances that they're going to be born into. But here what are. And so accepting that is a really powerful tool. And once we begin to accept that part of ourselves, we could then look to influence our environment, or our situation, or we can influence factors within our life to create change. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to accept ourselves and that's the way it is, a kind of defeatist mindset. That's not the suggestion here. The suggestion is where you're at right now, to accept that for all that that matters, or all that that means. And then from that awareness of self, that acceptance of self, we could begin to look forward, and from that place of peace, from that place of harmony, we can go on to create